Well, 2024 was an interesting year. 11 videos appeared, so let's pretend Issa and I got 11 videos done in the year. That is totally not how this works. I schedule the videos widely varying amounts in advance. For example, the Alan Lichtman 13 Keys video was uploaded 30 minutes before it went live, while I think the last video of this year on numismatic taxonomy was actually uploaded in 2023. And even then, some have very long gestations. The Nuns video was started well over a year before it went live. We kind of cover why in the video itself. I suppose, therefore, it'd be good to talk about the schedule. At the time of recording, this has edged back from every 3 weeks to every 6 weeks. I don't think there will be a year like 2023 again with its 17 episodes. My expectation is to do 8 in 2025, and the reason for that is I got a permanent job in May. At the beginning of last year, I accepted a position as the curator of Asian numismatics at the British Museum. The British Museum's Asian numismatic collection runs to about 160,000 objects excluding banknotes and covers everything from Islamic North Africa through Central Asia, India to China and Japan, and it is the only collection in the world which is completely accessible to the public. I took up the post in May, and it's very close to full-time. It will not directly impinge on historical perspective, and you're not going to hear me talking about that job again on this channel, because I've carved out a specific space to keep the work I do here completely separate from the work I do there, though there is bound to be some topical overlap. So yes, while I've carved out time for historical perspective, it will be a lot less time than I have previously spent, because that is going to be taking up a lot of my energy. But this is part of that time, so let's get back to the review of 2024. Always kind of interesting to see the top 5. These are the 5 videos which received the most views this year. No real surprises, the most popular videos remain those about works by men. I spent last year's review commenting on that. And the only video of this year to make it into that set is the discussion of Alan Lichtman. If we restrict it to just the top 5 videos of this year's production, the mix is more varied. By far the most successful after the 13 Keys was the 90-minute episode on the reception of Ibn Khaldun, another dead man. I enjoyed making that episode, and apparently some people, despite what Issa feared, actually watched it all the way through. I know, you might see some more of those kinds of very long episodes, but I'm also going to be trying to make some shorter episodes as well. There seems to be a sweet spot around 10 minutes where all of the most engaging videos sit. But in all honesty, it takes a lot more work to make a 10-minute video than a 20 or a 30-minute video, and it often feels like it's omitting some pretty important stuff. But it's an interesting challenge, so I'll absolutely try to do some more. Okay, let's talk about Alan Lichtman. I'm going to try hard here not to crow about this, but I had been wanting to do a video about the 13 Keys, a predictive system based on the history of US elections, for quite a while, and Issa and I prepared one before the 2024 US election. The 13 Keys is a work historians have known about for a long time, but it has only become well known to a wider audience since 2016. Ironically, the first election Lichtman, or Lichtman's model, got wrong, and the point from which he started to try and use the success of the 13 Keys to build a career as a political commentator. The work contains a pretty fundamental challenge to the way most historians, since at least the early 1980s, have thought about historical processes. The broad consensus is that historical events are the result of highly specific confluences of circumstance unique to their own moment in time. To describe that idea, I use the term historical contingency. One implication of historical contingency is that you cannot use perceived patterns in historical data to predict future events, contrary to the hopes many 19th century proponents of a scientific history had. And yet, at the beginning of 2024, Alan Lichtman's model had predicted 9 of the last 10 presidential elections in advance. Which, to be clear, because the probabilities are complicated, is nowhere near as impressive as it sounds, but is certainly enough to deserve some serious attention. It is arguable that the model got the 2024 election right. There is this long-standing problem in discussing this over whether the model itself is predicting things or whether Lichtman makes predictions of his own and then fudges the model to match those predictions. Only the first one of those would be interesting to the theory of history. As Issa and I discuss in that episode, there is no question the model was fudged to claim it pointed to a Harris win. Which, of course, we all now know is not what happened, but at the time was the better bet based on conventional wisdom about how the popular vote would fall. Which means we were right in that both Issa and I read the model as pointing to Trump, and Lichtman was wrong, not only about the election result, but also because he fudged the model, and in the process he added a lot of weight to Issa's evaluation that it's all really just a subjective fudge, though that doesn't really impact its central critique of historical contingency. It was also an interesting episode to do because it brought us into contact with an audience that does not normally watch the videos. A demographic group on YouTube who wed themselves to quite obtuse academic positions in the same way that they latch on to football teams or pop groups, i.e. without any critical engagement or often even basic understanding. So we got a lot of comments, which in a sense are good because YouTube sees them as engagement, from people who had not actually read about the 13 keys and were trying to correct the video based on their own misunderstandings. As I said, that's an interesting phenomenon and not one that we had intersected with before. All of which brings me back to a point I really wanted to make, which is, yes, we can crow about this and say that what happened subsequently vindicated everything Issa and I said prior to the election. We were right, Lichtman was wrong, but that doesn't really matter because the things we suggested were interesting in the episode about the 13 keys as a work are still interesting. We are going into 2025 with a lot less of a buffer than we did in 2024, so it's a little harder to say what upcoming videos will be about. If I get a really long video done, it's going to be on something very obtuse. I've actually got a whole bunch of notes on stuff I've been working on about Moogle mints, and feels like there's a video in there. And yeah, I realised that that pushes the envelope on what people might listen to, even from Ibn Khaldun. And as I said, I'm also hoping to do some shorter videos on smaller, more discrete topics. There will definitely be a video on the myth of barter, one of the foundational stories in economics, and one numismatists and anthropologists have real problems with. Maybe a video on Graham Allison's famous treatment of the Cuban Missile Crisis, hopefully a follow-up episode from the lives of the nuns in China. I've also been wanting to do a video about how you write economic history from coins. It's a really hard topic and I just haven't found the right way to tackle it, so maybe you'll see that. But as long as I enjoy making them, there absolutely will be video essays here on the channel. I hope your 2024 was productive and enjoyable, and that your 2025 will be likewise.